Hi guys, hope you're doing well in your studies, enjoying this, engaged, excited, somewhat confused, because if you're not confused, you're not learning. I want to talk to you briefly about the idea of character structure. The word character is an underlying concept of the entire Townsend Institute. And it's a funny word because you think about character, you think, well, character, this means I have integrity and I go to church and I don't cheat on my income tax and I don't steal and, you know, all that. And that's part of it. And some people say, oh, character, that's personality. That's, am I an introvert or extrovert? That's part of it. Some people say, oh, what a character that person is. That means they're crazy at parties. That's character too. But this is a different kind of character. We use this in the technical sense, and you'll hear this all the way through the program in this way. Character is that set of abilities or that set of capacities required to meet the demands of reality. Character is that set of abilities or capacities required to meet the demands of reality. In other words, life demands a lot of us. To get a job and fall in love and find God and find others and find your gifts and be healthy. And the things you need to do that are what you're going to pull off to become a person of character. And that's one of your goals for your client, is to find out what character issues, what pieces are they missing? Do they have abuse or neglect or trauma or condemnation of some part of their character so that they're not fully finished? If you go to Romans 5, for example, Paul talks about in the passage of suffering about how hope and suffering and all these things, they produce the word character. And the word character in the Greek in Romans 5 means experience. Experience. In other words, you ever know somebody who had a lot of head knowledge, but they just didn't have it here? They didn't have character. They knew a lot of things. They knew a lot of principles and wisdom and Bible verses, but it wasn't in here because character is an oven. There's no such thing as a microwave counseling, guys. It's an oven. God's sanctification process is long. Experience, experience, experience. So you have to take your client through not only understanding the principles as a teacher and educator, but also take them through emotional and relational experiences, which actually train their neurology. The four aspects, and there are several subsets to this, but the four aspects we want to keep working with you on. The first one is the capacity, the capacity is the ability to have need-based attachment. In other words, to be able to trust others, not just God, whom we're all supposed to trust, but to find people that you can trust too, and to fully trust them. And a lot of people say, I've got a lot of friends, I got a lot of people around me, but when you dig down in their lives in the counseling session, you find out they're all sourcing those people. They're helping, developing, guiding, maintaining, but they're not letting people source them. They have trust issues. So how do you develop need-based attachments? Because that causes a lot of depression and a lot of anxiety if people don't have enough of these in their life. The second one, besides need-based attachment, is separateness, which has to do with, do you own your life and do you own your choices and that sort of thing? You ever heard of the word boundaries? Probably have. And can a person have good boundaries? The third one is the ability to deal with the integration of good and bad. So sadly, we're in a fallen world and it doesn't work right. And so constantly we're dealing with perfectionistic issues and judging ourselves, judging others. How do we deal with the fact that we'll always be broken to some level no matter what we're doing, and so will our kids and our friends and our spouses, and how do we deal with that? And the fourth one's called adulthood. And it has to do with the fact that God's given you skills and abilities and some kind of vision for what you're supposed to do to make this planet a better place. So how do we develop those? When people have issues in attachment, or they don't have good boundaries, or they can't deal with negative realities, or they don't know kind of who they are or where they're supposed to be, that develops the symptoms we talked about. Remember the three P's I've talked about in earlier places: personal problems, people problems, and professional performance problems. So let's understand, as soon as you're in the client's room with that person, you've got to pay attention to the pain and the symptoms. You've got to pay attention to where they're struggling. But your question, and I think every counselor needs to be a why person. Before we give answers or interpretations, what's the why? Is, are they speaking from isolation and lack of trust, disconnection? Are they speaking from they feel so guilty that they can't say no to anybody? Are they speaking from a place of shame and judgment? Are they speaking from, I'm just a little kid and I don't have any abilities? You'll be a great counselor if you don't stop with the symptoms, if you go to the character structure. So we're going to spend a lot of time on that. You will be amazed, and I really mean this, you'll be amazed at the miracles that happen when you as a good counselor go beneath the pain to the character and begin the healing process. It's going to be a good ride. I'll see you soon.